There comes a moment in every man's life when the world suddenly goes quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but the kind that echoes inside your chest, where even your own heartbeat sounds like a reminder of everything you've lost. You look around and everything you once believed in is gone. The people you trusted vanish. The plans you made collapsed. The future you once saw so clearly turned into a fog you can't see through anymore. And that's when it hits you. Life didn't just test you, it broke you. But here's what no one tells you when life breaks you. It's not trying to end you. It's trying to remake you. Because every man who's ever risen from the ashes had to burn first. Every great comeback started with collapse. And maybe, just maybe, this pain you're feeling isn't your ending, it's your beginning. There's a kind of pain that words can't describe. It's not the kind you cry about once and move on. It's the kind that changes the way you breathe. The kind that makes you stare at the ceiling at 3 a.m., asking questions no one can answer. Why me? What did I do wrong? Why does everything I touch fall apart? You start losing faith, not just in the world but in yourself. You used to have drive, ambition, energy. But now, you can't even recognize the person in the mirror. The spark in your eyes, gone. The strength in your voice, gone. The fire that once made you believe anything was possible, gone. And people look at you differently now. Some pity you, others judge you. But no one really sees what's going on inside. The silent war between who you were and who you're becoming. You try to fight it. You try to hold on. But life keeps pulling harder. And before you know it, you're standing in the ruins of your dreams, your confidence, maybe even your relationships. Everything feels pointless. You stop showing up for yourself. You start accepting the version of you that life broke down. And yet somewhere deep inside that wreckage something still flickers, a whisper, a faint voice saying, "This isn't how your story ends." But you ignore it. Because how do you rebuild when you've lost the blueprint? How do you rise when your legs can't carry the weight of yesterday? How do you believe again when belief is what betrayed you? You sit there drowning in silence thinking it's over. But here's the truth, brother. It's not over. This is the part of your story no one wants to talk about. The fall, the dark chapter. The one that breaks your ego, your illusions, your comfort. The one that takes everything fake away from you so only the real can remain. Because you can't rebuild until you've been broken. You can't find purpose until you've lost direction. And you can't discover your strength until life forces you to use it. This is the fall, the point where everything stops making sense. But one day, when you look back, you'll realize this was the moment that saved you. Because what felt like destruction was really the foundation being cleared for your rebirth. There comes a moment, right after the storm, when silence starts to feel different. It's not the silence of defeat anymore, it's the silence that starts whispering truth. At first, you don't want to hear it. You're too angry, too broken, too tired. You're still asking, why did this have to happen to me? But that same question slowly begins to echo back as something else. What if this had to happen for me? And that's where everything begins to shift. You start realizing that pain wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The nights you cried weren't wasted, they were teaching you how to see in the dark. The people who walked away weren't losses, they were lessons. Every moment that shattered you was sculpting something inside you that comfort never could. You start to see that life doesn't break you out of cruelty. It breaks you out of who you're not, because maybe the man you were before wasn't strong enough for the life you were meant to build. Maybe that old version of you, the one who needed validation, who feared rejection, who settled for good enough, had to die so the real one could breathe. The pain you felt wasn't just pain, it was instruction. It was life whispering, wake up, you've been living small. And the more you start listening, the more you realize, pain doesn't speak in words. It speaks in silence, in reflection, in those quiet moments when you finally stop running and start facing yourself. You begin to connect the dots. You see how that heartbreak taught you empathy, how failure taught you humility, how betrayal taught you discernment, how loneliness taught you self-respect. Everything starts aligning, not perfectly but purposefully. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? And that one question changes everything. Because that's the moment you stop being a victim of your story and start becoming the author of it. You begin to carry your pain differently. You don't hide it anymore. You wear it like armor, not as a reminder of what broke you, but of what you survived. And suddenly, the same moments that once made you feel weak start giving you strength. The same memories that haunted you start guiding you. You realize you're not healing back into who you were. You're becoming someone stronger, quieter, wiser. That's the lesson hidden in the pain. That life wasn't trying to destroy you. It was trying to introduce you to yourself. And once you see that, once you understand that your suffering wasn't meaningless, that every scar had a message, something inside you changes forever. You stop cursing the struggle and you start respecting it. Because now you know that pain was never the enemy. It was the teacher. And everything it taught you is exactly what's going to help you rise again. He didn't wake up one morning suddenly healed. There was no grand moment of clarity. No applause. No finish line waiting. It started small, painfully small. One morning he just decided to get up. To stop waiting for someone to save him. To stop replaying what went wrong. He got up not because he wasn't tired anymore, but because he was tired of being tired. That's how the rebuild begins, not with a roar, but with a whisper that says enough. At first, it feels like walking through fire barefoot. Every step burns, every effort feels pointless. You start working again, but the results don't show. You start believing again, but doubt still follows like a shadow. Yet you keep going because something inside you, something you can't even explain, refuses to die this time. He started piecing his life back together, one quiet act of discipline at a time, waking up early even when it didn't matter, working harder even when no one noticed, choosing gratitude even when his world still looked empty, and brick by brick something began to rise. It wasn't a comeback fueled by revenge or validation. It was built on something deeper, a kind of peace that only comes after you've lost everything and survived. He stopped needing people to see him, and that's when they started noticing. He stopped chasing approval, and that's when his presence started carrying weight. He stopped waiting for the right moment, and made the moment right himself. Because rebuilding isn't glamorous. It's long nights, self-doubt, rejection, and quiet victories no one sees. It's the kind of journey that demands more heart than hype. He began to understand that progress isn't about speed. It's about direction. You can move fast and go nowhere, or you can move slow and build something that lasts. And while everyone else was chasing quick success, he was mastering the art of patience. He learned that greatness doesn't come from one big decision. It's built from 1,000 small ones made in silence. When you choose to show up again. When you keep going after failing again. When you keep your faith even when there's nothing left to believe in. That's the part no one talks about, the lonely climb back to purpose. But that's also where the real transformation happens. Because when you rebuild from rock bottom, every brick is stronger. Every wall you raise carries the memory of what you've survived. And every time you want to quit, you remember. This time, you're not building to prove anyone wrong. You're building so you never fall apart the same way again. He didn't rise overnight, he rose bit by bit. He didn't roar back to life. He rebuilt it quietly, humbly, relentlessly. And in that silence he became unstoppable. Because the man who rebuilds from nothing doesn't fear losing anything anymore. He knows what it takes. He's done it before. And now, he's ready for everything life still has to throw. At first, no one noticed. The world had moved on. People who once doubted him didn't even remember his name. But he kept showing up anyway, day after day, brick by brick. He worked in silence so long that even he forgot what the noise of validation sounded like, until one day something shifted. The results began to show, not suddenly, but subtly. A door opened that once stayed shut. A small opportunity appeared where there used to be none. And when he walked through it, people started whispering again. But this time it was different. He wasn't the same man anymore. His voice was calmer, his eyes sharper, his presence heavier. Not because he gained something new, but because he earned back everything he lost, piece by piece. That's what consistency does. It doesn't make noise, it makes proof. The world doesn't reward the loudest. It rewards the ones who refuse to stop moving. The ones who keep walking through the storm until their footsteps start echoing louder than their excuses. He had learned that momentum is born from quiet repetition. Every time he woke up early when he didn't want to, that was strength. Every time he worked when no one clapped, that was strength. Every time he smiled through doubt and showed up anyway, that was strength. Strength doesn't scream, it builds quietly, consistently, patiently, and when it returns, it's not just physical, it's spiritual, it's emotional, it's unbreakable. People started asking him, "How did you do it?" He didn't have an answer, because the truth was, he didn't do it. He became it. He became the kind of man who no longer needed validation to keep going. The kind who no longer sought revenge against those who doubted him, because their opinions didn't matter anymore. The kind who no longer ran from pain, because he'd learned how to use it. His strength didn't come from the comeback. It came from surviving the breakdown. It came from knowing that even if everything collapsed again, he would rebuild again. Because this time, he wasn't afraid of falling. He'd already seen the bottom, and he'd already climbed out. That's the beauty of real strength. It doesn't just help you lift yourself up, it helps you lift others too. When people looked at him now, they didn't just see success, they saw resilience. They saw a man who went through hell and came back carrying light. And that's when he realized something powerful. The pain that once broke him had become the foundation that others were now standing on. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was leading. Without saying a word, his story was speaking for him. And the message was simple: strength doesn't return when you win. It returns when you refuse to give up long enough for the world to see what you were building all along. There comes a moment, quiet, almost sacred, when you look back and realize the storm that once tried to destroy you actually rebuilt you, not into who you were, but into who you were meant to become. He didn't have everything figured out. He didn't suddenly become rich or famous. But when he looked in the mirror, he saw something far greater: peace. The kind of peace that doesn't come from comfort but from conquering yourself. He saw the man who once cried behind the wheel of his car, ready to give up on everything. And he realized that man didn't die there, he was born there. Because rock bottom wasn't his end, it was the birthplace of his new beginning. He finally understood what the pain had been trying to teach him all along, that life isn't about avoiding the fall, it's about learning to rise every single time you do. He started helping others. Not with loud speeches or perfect words, but through quiet example. People could feel his journey, the calmness in his presence, the gravity in his eyes. They knew he'd seen darkness and they trusted him because he didn't pretend he hadn't. That's how legacies are built, not through perfection but through truth. The truth that everyone breaks, everyone falls, everyone doubts, but only the few who keep standing back up get to see what they were truly made for. He became living proof that broken doesn't mean finished, that failure isn't fatal, that every scar you carry can either define your pain or refine your power. And that's the ultimate lesson he carried with him. When life breaks you, it's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to build the version of you that can't be broken again. Because when you've rebuilt yourself from the ground up, you move differently. You speak differently. You live differently. You stop chasing and start becoming. You stop reacting and start creating. He no longer wanted revenge. He no longer needed to prove anything. He just wanted to give back what his pain had taught him. To remind every lost soul that being at your lowest doesn't mean you're finished. It means you're being refined. His story wasn't about success anymore. It was about significance. It was about the kind of strength that whispers, "If I can rise from that, so can you." And that's what made him powerful. Not the money, not the fame, not the recognition, but the quiet certainty that no matter how many times life knocks you down, you've already learned the one truth that changes everything: you can always rise again. Because the rebuild isn't just about getting your life back. It's about becoming the kind of person who will never lose themselves again. He walked through fire and came out carrying the light. And now when people look at him, they don't just see a man who survived. They see a man who learned to rise. The pain that breaks you today is the same force that will rebuild you tomorrow. If you let it teach you instead of defeat you, Every fall is a lesson, every scar is proof, and every comeback begins the moment you refuse to quit.